method is a really good beginning, and I would like to wish everyone a successful, a kind of productive learning, and kind of growing in the spirituality in any possible way.
Amen.
So this evening we're going to discuss together a very interesting topic. It is also a very topical, and it's about the collapse of civilizations. And I would like to start with a question. What do you think is the reason that a civilization collapses? What do you say?
Is this just in general? Like even
Yeah.
like the Roman, Greeks, Persian, and all those empires?
Yeah.
So one thing, I'm not sure much, but I guess the way how the Egyptian empire collapses because the Jews overthrew them and everything and all, and they couldn't recover from that. And then I guess the Persian Empire, there was like so many empires at once, everyone's attacking each other, that there was just one empire that was taking advantage, and that was the Greek Empire, and took advantage of all the other empires at once and got rid of all of them. I remember I heard like Alexander the Great's father took out all of Sparta, and he took the rest of Persia and everything and all. And those two empires were fighting each other for quite a while. And then the Roman Empire, same thing. Two towns got together, made another empire. And then over time, it fell because, basically like America now. It goes through a bunch of cycles and no one can keep up with it.
Very interesting. So you were talking about a competition and kind of threat of enemies from the outside that causes an empire or a great civilization into a collapse. Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's mostly internal. It's like moral decadence, which leads to complacency and social decadence, and then just naturally, like what happened with the Roman Empire, the surrounding people who have been oppressed by, the Roman Empire just sort of rebel, rise up, and take over. But it starts with just, I think it comes from a moral decadence where they just kind of let social mores and personal mores just go to the wayside, and then eventually, society can't function that way. And then it starts maybe with just like one city, but then it spreads, and then the whole empire or civilization just falls apart.
Beautiful idea. You are talking about the internal problems that they actually enable the empire to a collapse within. Okay, that is very interesting. You also we talked about the Roman Empire. We're going to talk about that more later. What do you think?
Well, ultimately God's will, but I would like to add, though, there are many cases where the empire is very wealthy or very successful. It's very large, and it breaks up internally, not because of, I would say, mass immorality. Rather, you could think of Spanish Empire, Britain, right? Instead, a lot of its colonies or new created races of people, half mixed, etc., no longer identify with orders from London or from Madrid and want to, break off Australia, Zealand, Canada, the States from London. So sometimes when it becomes too big, people self-segregate or break down based on usually subracial or cultural reasons, usually one of the two tied. And I think it's the Jewish thinker. He was one of the early Zionists who was actually friends with Marx, so they had a fallout. But he talked about that a lot. They disagreed on how you could get global communism, basically. And the guy who disagreed with Marx said, you need to break it down by regions, like South America, Central America, North America, when it was all white, right? Europe, Russian Soviet sphere, China, and then the people already have so much in common, you'll get it. But if you try to do this across the planet thing, no one's going to get that. You need a communism for Muslims, a communism for... I think that generally is true.
Very interesting. This is the beautiful things that you said. also we connected it to a globalization, which we see now that in the Europe, the nationality is actually a very important. What do you say?
So I agree with Michael that it's a lack of morality inside the society that leads basically to the end, to the breakdown of the nation, of the country, of the empire, and also the lack of God consciousness. Like they stop believing, or like, okay, doesn't fit for like the Roman Empire. They never believed in God, but like, okay, no, if I break it down, it's the lack of morality that leads to the
I guess add one thing. Also,
Yeah, sure.
It's not an overnight thing. Obviously, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
It could take even centuries. It could take happen over a long period of time. And also to add to what he said, is that the concept of an empire itself is very challenging. A massive civilization that spans an entire continent. In ancient civilizations, there before the, there was always like one big empire in the world. Babylonians, the Egyptians, even the Egyptians didn't really try to conquer. They just kind of had their own thing.
No, they also
in
tried
Egypt.
to conquer.
Right. I mean, more regional. They weren't trying to like take over the world, so to speak, or maybe the world at the time.
All over what is now Israel with the Hittites.
Right. So they did have a little bit of that, but and so every empire that existed, eventually it just gets out of hand. You can't control that massive of a
Right.
you can't have one person or even a few people controlling that massive of a civilization. City states make more sense. It's more regional.
Right.
It's more manageable, I guess. But when you have so many different cultures and so many different groups together, and you're trying to get them all like to do one thing, and they're just like, it's just not going to work, and eventually it's just going to fall apart.
I think that you can have civilizations that are immoral, and I think you can have civilizations without God, and I think you can have empires and civilizations are kind of different in the sense that empires are really composed of many civilizations. No, I think that the thing that makes an individual civilization fall apart is a lack of general will among the people within it to like propagate itself and like make it live, and like a genuine like brotherhood between the people there, and unity, and like drive to help one's fellow man within that society. Even if to the end of doing immoral things or moral things, right? But if you just like, I guess like individualism and pessimism are like the big forces.
Wouldn't that be, wouldn't extreme individualism and the lack of unity be sort of fall under the category of lack of morality?
Yes, but you could also have a civilization that's fine, that has things like slavery. Like, look at Rome. They have like gladiator fights. Right.
How do we define immorality?
It's like yes, that's a type of immorality, but it's not like there are
by Christian standards.
There's certainly immoral types of civilizations
Right.
that work.
Moral doesn't necessarily even have to be about God consciousness alone. It can also be sort of just logical social mores, just like how you like Ben said, like how you just treat your fellow man, how you interact with people. That's also a big part of it.
I think that God, or at very least like divine ideas that are like other than like modern science, right? The idea that like, for example, you need people to not just listen to whatever there is logical short-term like mind wants them to do, and the best way to do that is religion. That's what gives people taboos and culture and a reason to help one's fellow man, other than it helps me, is these idea of God or gods or whatever, So, or karma, even like in China, they don't necessarily have gods, but they do have like ideas,
We explored together different reasons for the collapse of empires and civilizations. There were reasons given that an empire collapses from within. Remind me your name? Michael said that it is because of immorality. Ben said it is because of the lack of unity. and we had other ideas. Could you remind me your name?
David.
David said that it is when an empire expands too much, so it falls apart, and also the different nations from within, they decide that they want to have their own countries. So we saw different ideas. Let's now explore specifically about the dictatorships. Okay, we talked about the civilizations in a general aspect, but dictatorship regimes. This is going to be a topic today, trying to understand why a tyrannical regime actually collapses, because it is supposed to be the opposite, because they have so much power, they have so much control. Why don't they last? So there is a very interesting chapter in the Tehillim, in the Psalms. You could see it at the top, which actually it talks about this. It talks about this question. And today there are very powerful dictatorship regimes in the world. And when we ask ourselves, what is going to be the future? Are they going to continue oppressing and acting in an immoral way, or is there going to be a change? And what King David says in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, that no tyrannical regime can last forever. It is going to collapse in the long run. It doesn't matter how powerful it is, it doesn't matter how strong they are, how much control they have, they are eventually going to collapse. And there is a very interesting allegory presented here in the Tehillim. It is about the palm tree, the cedar tree, and weeds. Now, we're just going to read the verses. Would anyone like to read the first chapter here? Chapter 92 in the Psalms?
Hebrew or in English?
In English, yeah.
How great are your works, God, how infinitely profound your thoughts. A man bare of reason does not understand, nor does a conceited fool comprehend this. When the wicked springs up as weeds, and all the tyrants flourish, that is so that they may be destroyed forever. For behold, your enemies, God, for behold, your enemies shall perish. All the tyrants shall break up of themselves. The righteous will flourish like the palm tree. He will grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon.
Thank you, Michael. So, I would like to ask a very simple question. Why are the wicked compared to weeds, and the righteous they compared to a palm tree and a cedar? So, what do you say?
Well, I think because weeds, like they grow very fast, and a lot of them like quickly, but then they also die very quickly.
Oh.
But the palm tree, it grows slowly, but it's like stays there. It's sturdy. It lasts for a long time. I think like the wicked, they like yes they'll rise like and like spread very quickly, but then they'll die too. But like the righteous person will grow like a palm tree and will be there for a long time and flourish.
Beautiful. Remind me your name?
Yeah, Moshe.
Moshe says that there is an advantage and disadvantage in the palm tree compared to the weeds, because with weeds they grow very, very fast, and a palm tree, it takes a very long time until it grows. However, weeds, they've got a disadvantage because they perish very quickly and easily. But a palm tree, it could withstand strong storms, and it could last for many, many years. Just a small anecdote that they found an olive tree that is over 2,000 years.
Oh, really? Where, here in Israel?
Yeah. So a tree can last for a very, very long time. Rabbi Hirsch actually, in his a commentary to Psalms, he explains this, and he says that this is exactly the comparison between the tyrannical regimes and the moral regimes that are based on a justice. And he says that a tyrannical regime, so they grow very, very fast. Empires that are based on evil, they are able to have a very fast control, because that they use the fear and force, and these are very strong tools. However, regimes that are based on a justice and a democracy, they take a long time until they get established, but once they are strong. So it is important to understand that the fast growth of evil is only temporary. And this, of course, it gives us a lot of hope, and it gives us optimism. I am just going to note that there is a difference between optimism and hope. And you need both of them. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs used to say that optimism, it is the belief that the world is going to change for the better, right? It is going to take time, but it's going to change. But hope is the conviction that we have to do something in order to change the world, where you can't expect that it is going to happen by itself. We have to take action. And you actually need both, but if you don't have a belief that it's possible, so you won't find the strength to actually change the world. So this is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs used to mention this a lot in his books. One of his famous books that I would highly recommend, it is called To Heal a Fractured World. A beautiful book that is full of great knowledge and insights. Let's say you continue here. If you pay attention to where it says number 2, it is on page 2. History proves evil collapses at the long run. So, it says in the verse in a Tehillim that we just read, it says, Ish Baal לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין את זאת. It says here, the translation to English, that a man bare of reason does not understand, and he can't comprehend this. So if the question is, the same, one would think that this is a test in faith, not in knowledge and in wisdom. But the answer is that actually history proves this. So it is a test in knowledge. And who would like to read the words of Professor James A. Froude? He gave a lecture at the Royal Institution in 1864. And he said something extraordinary. Who would like to read it? It is in the middle of page 2.
What then is the use of history?
Yeah.
Okay. What then is the use of history, and what are its lessons? If it can tell us little of the past and nothing of the future, why waste our time over so barren a study? First, it is a voice forever sounding across the centuries the laws of right and wrong. Opinions alter, manners change, creeds rise and fall, but the moral law is written on the tablets of eternity. For every false word or unrighteous deed, for cruelty and oppression, for lust and vanity, the price has to be paid at last. Not always by the chief offenders, but paid by someone. Justice and truth alone endure and live. Injustice and falsehood may be long-lived, but doomsday comes at last to them, in French revolutions and other terrible ways. Continue?
Yeah.
One lesson, and
Thank
only
you.
one, history may be said to repeat with distinctness, that the world is built somehow on moral foundations, that in the long run it is well with the good, in the long run it is ill with the wicked. But this is no science. It is no more than the old doctrine taught long ago by the Hebrew prophets.
Thank you, David. So whoever traces the path of history, it can discover that a tyrannical regimes who acted in immoral ways and they oppressed people, they at the end he collapsed and he disappeared completely from the face of history. And if we will examine maybe two tyrannical regimes which collapse, we are going to discover that the common denominator between them is the lack of justice and immorality. So Michael mentioned before the Roman Empire. Okay, so this is a classical example of a tyrannical regime, empire, which did last for many, many years, but it collapsed. And today it is only in museums, the remainings of it. So Michael, would you like to read his source free? This is from the famous historian Will Durant in the story of a civilization, and at the end he talks about why Rome fell, and this is one of his conclusions. It is just important to say that it took a very long time until it collapsed. It took 300 years, but at the end it collapsed. So, go ahead.
A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself within. The essential causes of Rome's decline lay in her people, her morals, her class struggle, her failing trade, her bureaucratic despotism, her stifling taxes, her consuming wars. Moral decay contributed to the dissolution.
Thank you. So, the Roman Empire, according to Willard Durant, is actually the reason for its collapse was because of problems from within. And he teaches us something very, very important, that the greater civilization is not it's not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within. And this is something very, very important. We could see that the thought that a temporary success of the wicked means that it is strong and stable. This understanding is completely miscorrect, because that whoever looks at the lessons of history as James Fraud and Will Durant and many others, they cannot not see the temporary of the wicked, that tyrannical regimes, they cannot last forever. So we have to try and understand a very important question. And now that we saw that history teaches us that tyrannical regimes, they collapse, we have to ask ourselves, why is that so? Why does evil collapse? So what do you think? What do you think is the reason for this?
So evil creates suffering amongst the people,
Mhm.
and the suffering, like if people or whole society feels like they suffer under some great evil, tyrant, whatever, the system, and then they feel that they want to change something about that
Mhm.
to bring back justice in their understanding,
Mhm.
and that brings up rebellions, revolutions, something like that, like violence, basically. And this is basically the internal struggle of the nation, of the country, which ultimately will, over time, damage its economy. It also broadens the rift between certain sides. Those who hold the power, those who feel not depressed, but no, depressed, but
Oppressed.
depressed,
Oppressed.
oppressed, right. And yeah, this ultimately, like over time, will lead to some event, revolution, or something that destroys the country from within. That's the
Mhm.
understanding.
So David is saying that yeah.
No, sorry. No, because,
Please.
like so this is how evil brings itself, its own system, always colored, because
Mhm.
it's nature of evil to bring destruction, basically.
Mhm.
So this is, yeah.
So you were saying that oppression leads to suffering, and suffering leads to action, and action leads to destruction.
Yeah.
So a beautiful, beautiful explanation. We are going to see something very interesting that Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says about this on his commentary to Tehillim. So this is what he says. Who would like it to read in source 6? Please.
6. No human society can continue to exist without morality and respect for what is right. This is the order of the world as God created it, and it is by this immutable law of creation that evil and violence will perish.
Thank you. So this is actually a law of nature, but Hashem programmed in nature that it is going to act like this. And according to Rabbi Hirsch, this is the order of the world. Now, it's very interesting that evil destroys itself, and this is a very strange midrash. There's a story. We are here close to a Parashat Noach. So there's a story that there's a story according to the midrash that Hashem told Noach to bring into the ark 2 of every species in the world, right? So also falsehood wanted to come into the ark. So Noach told him, you have to find yourself a partner. Okay, so a falsehood went and he found a destruction. So they did a deal between them. And this is what the Midrash says. Destruction said, what am I going to get if I agree to be your partner? So a falsehood said, I am going to make an agreement with you that every profit that I make, you are going to be able to take out. So they agreed. And then after the flood, so a falsehood said to a destruction, why are you taking everything that I was able to achieve? So destruction said it didn't really do this agreement, and then a falsehood it didn't have anything to say. So this is the midrash. Now, when we study this midrash, so we are waiting for a twist in the plot, okay? That we would expect that a falsehood would cheat destruction, that a falsehood would lie, right? But it is not so. Why didn't a falsehood... What?
You said destruction or distraction?
Destruction.
Right.
Yeah. So why, against it, the nature of falsehood, it honored the agreement with destruction? We would have thought that there would be a twist in the story, right? So why do you think it isn't? It isn't so.
Why wouldn't falsehood betray destruction?
Right. It is against its nature, right? A falsehood should.
That's because they need each other, in a way.
After the flood, we don't need each other. We only did an agreement in order that they could both enter the ark.
Because if there's no destruction, then falsehood can't really do anything. Because if it's falsehood, there's no destruction, then falsehood is not going to accomplish much. Like in the new world or whatever. So I mean,
You were saying that they work together, yeah?
yeah, because if there's no destruction, falsehood it's a bit
Right.
annoying, but it's not gonna have a long-term effect. It's just gonna be it's be lying, but there's not gonna be no destruction because of it.
So, but it's of course true that they work together. I agree with you. So, if we look again at the words of Rabbi Hirsch that we read in Source 6, that this is the order of the world as Hashem created it. That evil actually destroys itself. So we asked,
Is that why the communist idea died within 80 years?
Yes.
Less time than America stood.
Yes. Absolutely. So the answer that I would like to suggest to the question, why didn't a falsehood betray destruction? It is because it didn't have any choice. Because that the order of the world as Hashem created it, it is that falsehood always brings to self-destruction. As here David, right?
Moshe.
Moshe said that you can't separate between the two; they go together. As it says, it says in Aramaic, "Yakush takai shikran lokai," that the truth stands and a falsehood does not stand. It can't withstand. So justice and good, they are eternal. But a falsehood and evil, they destroy themselves. So how does this happen? Let's try to go even deeper. So Rabbi Hirsch explains in the verse in the Tehillim that we just read, he explains that whoever acts in an immoral way, yet the end he brings to his own downfall. And if somebody could read source 8 on a page number 5, okay? I would like to read it. Okay, go ahead.
If leaders of human society demonstrate by their own evil example how power can be used for selfish gain, and that the motive which guides the acts of men is not the standard of moral worth, but a measure of the possibility of success, the result will be the spread of contempt for everything that is morally good, and the dissemination of the blind worship of success in every stratum of society. Even the mightiest man will perish through his own wicked example. He has deprived the masses of every vestige of moral conscience. For as a result of the demoralization which he himself will have spread among his fellows, he will eventually find no man whom he himself can really trust. And conversely, it has always been true that whenever nations have succumbed to moral corruption, they have produced tyrants who in turn proved to be the scourges at whose hands the corrupted masses suffered and perished in the end. In either case, personal tyranny and nationwide corruption ultimately led to each other's ruin. No direct act of divine intervention is needed for this purpose.
Thank you. So, what a Rabbi Hirsch says here, that a tyrant actually brings it to his own downfall, because he creates an atmosphere of mistrust and of a falsehood and fear, and it leads to betrayal. And we will just mention the famous historical example of that Shakespeare he told in the play Julius Caesar, that everybody knows that the emperor Julius Caesar he was betrayed by his own friend and then Brutus. And then he says the famous words. What does he say?
Et tu verte. You too were.
That's right. Yeah. So he
Isn't this also kind of like this thing by Rabbi Hirsch? Isn't this also kind of example of for the Nazis in the German Empire? How Hitler
That's right.
kind of like brainwashed all of them to think that, as it says, that the the whole motive of moral worth and success is that's whatever, because we're gonna if you follow me, I'll conquer the world, basically. So I don't know. It's kind of related that he was like a tyrant that brainwashed against the German people to follow him.
absolutely. And he also brought it to his own downfall, because when he decided to attack Russia in the Barbarossa operation, this was a grave mistake, because the Russians were on their side. And then when he betrayed the Ribbentrop and the Molotov agreement, and he attacked Russia from greed, because he wanted to conquer Russia. He actually brought it to his own downfall, because that was the point that he opened up a second front, and he also forgot the general who defeated Napoleon. Who was the general? Winter.
Right.
For Russian, winter is terrible.
I heard a history book from my history T-shirt back in 10th grade was the Nazis forgot to do one thing was learn history, that you never attack Russia in the middle of winter. What did they do? Exactly that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The reason why history can help you sometimes is to know never attack Russia in the winter.
That's right. And I have got here examples. I don't know if it's here or elsewhere, but I've got evidence that the generals, the Nazi generals, they actually reported back that the gas in their tanks actually froze, and they had to burn bonfires underneath the tanks in order to cause the gas to melt. And they tell all kinds of interesting examples about how the soldiers, they didn't have any food, and they were cold. They didn't have enough warm clothes. So actually, they brought onto themselves the downfall, and this, as you said, Moshe, actually proves the point that evil destroys itself. Now, perhaps I may just going to bring another interesting example for this. This is something that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs brings. Something very interesting. He says that when the Egyptians ran after the people of Israel after they left Egypt, and they got to the Red Sea. So the Egyptians, they didn't have to go into the Red Sea when it parted, but
But they did. And that's what the downfall was.
that's right, because of they were so obsessed in attacking the nation of Israel, they brought it to their own destruction. And what was it? Even when they were in the Red Sea, they still could have been saved. They could have been saved because when they saw that the water was coming back, they could have ran away. Why did they still stay there? So the answer that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs gives is very interesting. It is that they had their chariots. Their chariots were their prized warfare. It was like their tanks, and they did not want to let go of their chariots. And the chariots of they got stuck in the mud there, and they refused to let go of him because they knew that if they let go of their chariots, they aren't going to be as powerful as they used to be.
Like overinflated ego, kind of like too prideful.
That's right. And their obsession for power, that is actually what brought their downfall. And the Beit Halevi, the great Rabbi Soloveitchik, he was the grandfather of Rabbi Soloveitchik. So he says something very interesting. He says that it wasn't a miracle that the Egyptians drowned in the Red Sea. The miracle was that the sea parted and the nation of Israel were saved. But it wasn't a miracle that the Egyptians died. It was actually the obsession that it caused them to drown, but it wasn't a miracle. It is actually, as Rabbi Hirsch says, the law of nature that Hashem created in the world, that evil destroys itself. So this is something interesting that he says. So I think that we are going to conclude. We are just going to summarize what we studied today. We talked about the reason for the fall of the dictatorship regimes, and the reason is that evil destroys itself. Evil destroys itself, and only justice can prevail for the long run, because of the light of morality it never fades. So, a good evening, everyone.
I just wanted to say one thing that
Yeah.
I was thinking is that there is